Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girja. My name is Girja Bhargav Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girja, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girja and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. I have such a special guest with us today. Born in Vietnam and raised in Southern California, after her family fled Vietnam as war refugees, Lai-DuMone watched her parents pave a new life for themselves. Her life experiences are inherently integrated in the impact she makes today with her work. Van is the founder of WorkSmart, a TEDx speaker, and a Heart of Gold. WorkSmart is a progressive team development and leadership training consultancy that utilizes creativity, play, and experimental training and learning to evolve the mindset, skill sets, and behaviors in the workplace. Her passion and expertise has extended her work to helping veterans, and she also specializes in empowering women in the workplace to be confident and competent in acknowledging their accomplishments and managing conflict. I am so excited to have Van with us today because her story is so powerful. We've had the chance to talk before. We were definitely having tons of laughs right now, right before we started. And I know that she has such amazing things to share with you today. So welcome to Law Chat, Van. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Girja. So my name is pronounced Van, but that was such a beautiful introduction. I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'm so sorry. I should have asked you how to pronounce your name before we started, like properly.
And it doesn't even matter because once you look at it in writing, everyone reverts back to Van. So, but it's Van like sun.
Van. Okay.
Yes.
Love that. Thank you.
Of course. Nice to be here.
Oh, yes. I think it's so special. I'm so happy we were able to connect. I know it was taking us time to connect also, but there is definitely, some meaning to the whole, like, timing is everything. So I'm happy that we were able to have this conversation. And I love your story because your story is unique. And it's a story that not many other people can share because going through that whole process of being a refugee and coming into the United States in those circumstances is so different from, I believe, the average American out there. So if we can start our story there, I would love to really dive into that a little bit and learn more about that experience. And I know you were little, but I'm sure it impacted you as you were growing.
Yeah. So first, going back to this idea of having a story to share, I truly believe that everyone has a very unique story to share. And I believe that because I never thought my story was special, right? It took me 40 some years until I'm like, oh, this is a story that people might want to hear. Wow. So yeah. So the story is like, so I am a Vietnamese refugee. My family came here in 1975. I was 2 years old and we fled the country the day Saigon fell to the Communist Party. It was April 29th, and my dad was a colonel in the South Vietnamese Air Force, and we lived on the Air Force Base. And when he went to work that day, he was told, you need to get your family out today as any way you can. And there was a concerted effort to get and the U.S. forces, like that was the day they were told to leave too. So there was a concerted effort by the U.S. military to not only get their own people out, but get as many allies and civilians out as possible. Yeah. So we were one of the fortunate ones who were able to get out of the country. We ended up in Guam first, and then we came over here to Camp Pendleton Marine Base in San Diego. So that was our very first home here in the United States. Again, I was 2 years old. I don't remember any of it, but I've heard stories from my parents, read stories, and it was just a beautiful time. I think it says a lot that my mom thinks of that time as peaceful, because I mean, it says a lot about how we were treated there. The Marines had only less than 36 hours to build 18,000 tents for 18,000 people. They fed us, they played with us, they taught us that, you know, it's like they just went above and beyond anything they needed to do. So I often talk about how, you know, when you think about Marines, you think about warriors. And I look at them first as humanitarians. And yeah, so there was one girl at the time, she's a grown woman now, but a teenager who was who had written something. She got off the bus at Camp Pendleton, and she said a Marine came up to her and in Vietnamese said to her, "Welcome to your new country. I hope you feel safe here."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I'm absolutely, I like got chills just even listening to how your dad was told to leave immediately. And I can't imagine completely like uprooting yourselves from what your identity is, what your home is, where your culture. I mean, there's just so many layers to that identity, right? It's not just, oh, I was born here. It's like there's so many layers to that. And having to leave because of the fear of life, the fear of losing everything that matters the most. And I don't know if you could share some of your parents' perspectives on that and how they felt at that time, if they've ever shared that with you.
It's, you know, Asian culture, there's not a lot of sharing feelings. But in hindsight, I feel like you know, like I grew up as an American kid, right? I grew up here in Santa Monica among surfers and and people, you know, not a lot of ethnicity. And so I grew up as an American kid thinking all my youth were like, you guys don't understand me. And now as an adult, I realized like, well, I didn't understand them, right? Like, how do you lose everything and start over? Like literally everything. And as you said, I work with a lot of veterans now. And veterans in transition, you know, moving from when they leave their careers in the military, the biggest thing they talk about is that loss of identity. And it reflects to me like, wow, like my dad lost like his position in the military, as well as his home, as well as his country, as well as his culture, as well as his family we had to leave behind. And I think, and without any support system. And we were fortunate to be I would have to say, I shouldn't say no support system, because we had like, you know, Camp Pendleton. The next stage was at this place called Hope Village. So we had the support of strangers, but there was no like, you know, Vietnamese refugee support system. Like where you can come and talk about your feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't a thing back then. Now it's different, right? The community, there's definitely more information that can be spread very quickly now. But at that time, it was nothing. It was you figured it out as the news told you, or if you got a phone call or a letter.
Right, exactly. And then also I think a big part of when we're talking about this, a big part of it for my dad particularly was not asking for help. Right. Number one, being military, like I find that it's very hard to ask for help just because you're the one that's service. You're the one that's always serving others. So it's very hard to ask for help. And then within our culture too, I think it was very hard for him to ask for help. So he accepted the little that was offered, you know, like when we were sponsored by a church here, but he never asked for more. So really, like the idea of just being so insulated and isolated and doing everything on your own and for yourself, I can't imagine the loneliness he must have felt.
Wow. And then what did your parents, did they build their business here, or how did they help themselves live? And
sure. So after Camp Pendleton, we lived there for a few months. The next camp we were at was the first non-military refugee integration center in the United States. And it was called Hope Village, and it was sponsored by Food for the Hungry. And it was basically what they called an integration center. So not just fed us and housed us, but it was meant to find us sponsors, find careers for people. And my dad he didn't go into any specific training there, but my mom did. So there's this and this is my TEDx talk. There was a woman there who volunteered at the camp who was just like so excited to help these women find a career in their new country. And that volunteer happened to be Tippi Hedren, who was a Hollywood movie star. Her biggest starring role was in Alfred Hitchcock's movie, The Birds. Wow. And she's like, these women need a career in their new country. So she started a program that made typing and sewing classes available. And as they were doing that, these women, including my mom, just noticed like her beautiful long red manicured nails. And it was a curiosity for them. And they were curious about that. And clearly Tippi could have been like, thank you so much for noticing my beautiful nails. Just keep typing and sewing. But instead she took notice of it and she's like, well, what if we can get them licensed as manicurists?
Wow.
But that came with a few challenges. Like you needed to have a license. You had to take a written test in English. You had to go to school, and no one had money to go to school. And basically none of them spoke English.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of looking at like this, what seems like an insurmountable challenge, she didn't pay attention to that. She's like, well, let's see. Let's just take a small step and see. So she brought up her manicurist from LA, and Dusty taught them how to do a basic manicure, and they loved it. So Tippy went down to the local beauty school and just asked them, like, would you be willing? Like, these women don't have money. They don't speak English, and they only have 10 weeks of being here. So do you think we can get them into school and get them to be licensed manicurists? And that school, Citrus Heights Beauty College, also said yes. And after 10 weeks of schooling, 400 hours, all of them passed their manicure practicum and written test in English and got licensed. And then we were all sponsored around the country to different places. My family was sponsored by a church in Santa Monica. And Tippy came and took my mom around looking for her first job at a salon, and she found one. And that's how she got her career started. Yes. Yeah.
The power of community, of community, right? Like we don't realize it sometimes. And I feel like in our world, today's world, we don't realize community, and it's so virtual all the time that we don't realize the impact we can make on each other's lives. And I truly believe back then when things were simpler, everything was simpler, the impact was just so much more. It was just deeper, I feel. And not to reduce anybody's impact today, but just the fact that when you first got into the United States, it was like this whole new world that you were in. But the community that was there were the Marines, and they offered their love, their support, their welcoming nature. And I love your narrative about it and your perspective, because it's generally the opposite when you hear about the military sometimes being in foreign lands or whatever, and you hear just the negative stuff all the time in the media. But it's so beautiful to hear how much you adore it, and
absolutely,
so much affinity you speak about it also.
And I feel very strongly about that too, because I don't care, like, as far as like our politics, like everyone's gonna have different opinions about politics. Should we be there? Should we not be there? But the fact is, the men and women who signed that dotted line and raised their hand to give their lives for this country, they went there.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, there's and there's good and bad everywhere. But what my experience is like the men and women that I know who are from the military, veterans or active duty, they're there for the right reasons, right? Yeah. And many of them are there because they want to help people.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation. Yeah. And truly, that is the situation. I mean, I feel like politics is just high level, like I like to debate about it. We all have our opinions, and it's fun if you can have healthy debates about it, but it's really high level, such a high level that when you bring it down and you reduce it to the community level, humanitarian aspect of people come out. And the love for others to help them, to make them get better. Like even with Tippy, how she came and she open doors that have never been open before.
Absolutely. And and paid attention.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
Right. And like the fact is what she intended to do was help these 20 women find a career for themselves. What she ended up doing was starting an $8.3 billion industry and helping hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese refugees and immigrants after that to provide for their families and help support their families in this country. Exactly.
And for them to help support the generations to come. And in her mind, it might not have been a big thing, or it might have just been a small legwork, or,
Yeah.
nothing that big. Just the way you were like, I don't think I had a story. And we're like, actually, hello.
Right.
Just to say, in general, anybody that's listening out there, it's what your small action might have a rippling effect far further than you ever thought it could have. And so
Right.
don't hesitate to show that love. Don't hesitate to show that helping hand. And I think it's so beautiful because truly, ultimately, it's the community that supported you that was, you're right, full of strangers.
Yeah. It's just strangers. And I think possibly that's why I jump into things so quickly now. I'm just thinking about this as we talk, because like you said, Tippy just went down to local beauty school, like, hey, can you help? Yeah. Right. And that's how I live my life. I was on Instagram the other day, and I saw this group called SUP Vets, Stand Up Paddleboarding Vets. I was like, I love to paddleboard. I want to go to Mexico, and I like to help veterans. So I just called them. I'm like, this is what I do. Is there any way I can help? And I feel like that's what I do naturally, but I really, a lot of people don't act like that, right? A lot of people how I got my TEDx talk was, I saw that someone was hosting a TEDx talk. They had all their speakers. So I bought it. They were just selling tickets. I bought a ticket, but I was like, hey, this TEDx talk is called TEDx Women, the Mission of Mavericks. And I had my story and my mom's story. And I'm like, that's a woman maverick. Right. Like, I need to be telling the story on the stage. So I just emailed her and asked her, do you have room for one more? Here's my story. And she said, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just like, that's like,
I always feel like the TEDx road is not that simple.
And I would say, like, and people always, many people will come and ask me, like, oh, can I have a talk with you? Like, how'd you get the TEDx? Like, what's the process? I'm like, well, mine's a little different, but I can also walk you through the normal process. But I think, like you said, like that example of Tippy, of just like, let's just see, let's just ask.
Yeah. Because honestly, like, it is just asking, because the worst answer you could get is a no. And that's okay, because there's always going to be another person that's going to say yes. And I think it goes back to so many other entrepreneurs out there who have this amazing idea, and then they'll keep repeatedly getting refused. And then all of a sudden it's like, yes. I think, what is it? The Ring, they'd gone, the people who created the Ring also,
the Ring doorbell. Yeah.
I believe this is to be correct, that they went on Shark Tank. They were completely rejected on Shark Tank.
Wow.
I mean, everyone has a Ring now.
Everyone. Yes. Mine has no batteries in it, but it's there.
We have like 3 in our house, around the outskirts of our house. You know, it's just, don't take that no for an answer when you believe in what you're doing and what you're saying. Like, even for your parents, how they didn't take the no, and I'm sure they felt hardship. I'm sure they also had challenges coming their way. Just the simple things of language barrier, even that in and of itself has so many challenges, but they didn't give up, because look at where you are today. Look at, like, their success they see in you also.
Yes. And I will have to say, like, this whole idea of not giving up, they had no choice. Right. Yeah. I talk a lot about, like, following curiosity, asking what if, taking small steps to like just follow your curiosity. And when I look at them, what you said, like, yeah, they just kept going because they had to, right? It was a necessity for them to. And what allows me to do is no longer a necessity for me to, like, follow all these curiosities. It's a luxury. And that's what their struggles allowed me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just at a workshop the other day, and it was just, building for 2022 and game planning and all that stuff. And there was a lady there sitting right next to me, so inspirational. And one of the biggest goals that she has in her life is that she has 4 kids. And she said 2 of them they already have like a full college fund and everything to pay for them. But my other 2 kids, I need to make sure that they're fully funded by me. And whether they go to college or not, that first year is fully funded by me too. And her basic goal was, I need to make sure they have freedom. I don't want them to be bogged down with the lack of freedom that I had and all the things that I had to do to make ends meet. I want my kids to have that freedom. And I'm like, wow, beautiful. Same like with your parents, my parents, all of our parents, like our I mean, I know my parents too, but like freedom from these financial bondages that we might have, and the
Right.
ability to give it to us. And whether it's financial or whether it's just the freedom to think and do something because they're educating you, that's everything.
It truly is. It truly is. And now we're parents too. I think the same of my child, right? And I also think about this idea of generational wealth. Like my parents were the first. So, they did what they could for me, and now I'm going to build on that for my child. And then hopefully, he's only 8, so I can't see what I'm like, is this kid ever going to work? But yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, so there's like this idea of making life easier for the next generation, not lazier, but it's like so they have freedom, more freedoms to make more different choices.
Exactly. So well put. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Mhm.
And now you started Work Smart, but how did you get into that line of business? And so what was your journey like?
So I have had probably any career you could think of. I probably had, so I went to UC Santa Barbara for school, and only because you're going to go to college. Like I grew up knowing I'm going to go to college. I had no idea what I want to do. I just knew Santa Barbara was a beautiful place. I wanted to be there. So I went there, studied psychology, left Santa Barbara, came back home, thought I was going to be a chiropractor or a physical therapist. And then one day just decided to go get my MBA. So I got my MBA at Pepperdine. Literally just I heard a radio ad for the MBA at Pepperdine. I'm like, I think I'll do that. So after getting my MBA, I moved down to San Diego, worked for this organization called SCORE Educational Centers. I ran a region of these retail after school programs. And then I just kind of ebbed and flowed between entrepreneurial ventures, consulting, all sorts of things, because I never knew what I wanted to do. I always was like trying to please my parents, right? Like what would make them proud without becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Yeah. so I think it was. So I was ebbing and flowing through like these 3 entrepreneurial ventures that none of them were really working out. So like, okay, let me find something more stable. And that's why I started working for a large pharmaceutical company. And it was supposed to be like a 1-year stint where I'm like, okay, let me just ground myself again in this and see what's next. And it was 9 years. I stayed there for 9 years. Wow. Great company, not the right place for me. And it was during that time that I was doing a lot of like leadership development, training, and I came up with this idea of what was at that point called craftivity events, where it was this idea of bringing creativity into the workplace. And then I just dropped it. It just lived in my brain for a good 9 years. Mm-hmm. And it was when I had my son 8 years ago, when I'm like, well, you know what? I don't want to continue just going to a job where I clearly just don't belong there. And I want him to see me do something that I love. So I decided to leave my job and start this business. And it looked very different when I started. At first, it was bringing arts and crafts to the workplace. It was like, and we would do like personal development workshops, and then maybe an art class at the end, like what we call like an art project at the end. But no one was buying it. So I kind of went back like, okay, where's the ROI in this? Like, where's the return on a company's investment on this? And so then I went back to like, okay, I know how to do leadership training and team development training. So why don't I take those and insert these creative elements into it? So that's how it started. And then the creative element at first was what I like to do, like hands-on creativity, arts and crafts. And then being in the world, I learned about this, like all different types of processes. Lego series play, which is a facilitation method where you build ideas with your hands through Legos, the creative problem-solving process. So I just started gathering all these tools into my toolbox and created what I have today. And I still get to do my arts and crafts at the end of the workshops, but I call them something different now. I call them creative artifacts.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a hands-on building a reminder of the work we did on that day. And that seems to be something that, again, it's just arts and crafts, but it seems to be a word, and the way I languaged it, something that corporations are more likely to invest in.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about this, the thought process that you had behind that. I like how you were not looking at what's my ROI, but you were looking at what would be the ROI for the company that I'm pitching to. Like, why would they want to invest in me? And what would be their ROI after they invest in me? And I think that's a beautiful question. And sometimes, a lot of times, we overlook it when we're thinking about our services or even the way we're marketing our services. Mm-hmm. So that is Brilliant. I love that you actually thought about that. And then number two is, I think it's so interesting how you bring in creativity and art into leadership and, development of teams. And how does that help leadership? How does that help develop those skills?
So the way I look at our training is I think about mindset, skill set, and then behavior. Because I can come in, a lot of trainings are like this, at least, that I've been involved in the past, where it's like, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to teach you a tool set, right? You want to communicate better? Here are tools to communicate better. But if my mindset is like, I'm not interested in communicating with my team, or I'm really bad at communicating, I'm never going to use those tools. So the way I use creativity is, well, number one, it's like the idea of mindset, skill set, and behavior. So the skill sets are tools, frameworks that I've either developed or gathered over time. And the mindset work is just like, how can you get to see things differently? And that's where creativity really comes in, right? How can you see from different perspectives? When I talk about creativity in the workplace, I don't talk about it as arts and crafts. I talk about creativity as a capacity. And everyone has the capacity to be creative, to take ideas, put them together differently, to come up with something new. So a lot of the mindset stuff is around like how to see things from a different perspective, the skill set, and then the behavior is oftentimes where we will bring in something creative. Like, for example, I have a course called Building Trust and Vulnerability as a Leader. And we do the mindset, skill set, and then the behavior part. I bring in a spoken word artist, and everyone has a chance to write a poem and speak it out loud if they would like to. And it's an experience of that behavior, right? It's an experience of the skill of trusting. So creativity really makes it experiential. Mm-hmm. And whether it's hands-on or through spoken word, through improv, but it brings the skill set into a behavior so they can experience it.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I mean, there's so much power to using our creativity or creative outlet in our mind. And a lot of times we box ourselves into just not doing that and just doing what we're supposed to be doing or told to be doing, or, what we believe is the right thing to be doing in our little box that we're in. And so I really like how you take your audience or who you're teaching outside of that box.
And we're all from outside that box, right? Like when you think about who we are as human beings, we're all innately creative. How do kids learn? Like they're always creating, they're always thinking outside that box. And then somehow we pigeonhole ourselves in that box as we get older. So what's beautiful about this work is like, I'm not creating anything new. We're just bringing you back to who we naturally are.
Oh, that is so awesome. So awesome. And I just don't believe this is very common, what you're doing also. I could be wrong, but I have not come across many individuals who are providing this kind of a service or this kind of teaching.
And it's interesting because when I first started this 6 years ago, that's what I thought too. I'm like, I'm the only one out here doing this. But I've gathered so many collaborators and friends who are doing similar work, right? So not exactly the same thing, but that's why a lot of my work is done in collaboration. Like I don't do spoken word, so I have someone who does that. Mm-hmm. I'm not a spoken word artist, but I have someone who does that. A DJ, right? And these are people who are not like, I didn't just meet this like spoken word artist on in a little club or in like a little poetry house. Like these are facilitators, these are professional facilitators, and these are their methodologies. Right. The work I do is kind of pulling it all together in a way where we can all make the impact we want to make, like in different modalities.
Yeah. And you bring it all together in one package for a company or for a company to experience that kind of education. Which companies have you already served in the past?
It's so strange. Like I don't often think about it, but I was just updating, my website designer update my website. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, over like Google and LinkedIn and MeUndies, Pandora, and so many, and then little smaller companies too. So there's been a lot. So a lot of nonprofits. I went back to Pepperdine. I worked with my old business school there. So there's a lot of them, and I just work with like Emblem Health and Guardant Health. So a lot of pharmaceuticals, going back to that, and this pandemic has opened up some interesting things for me. I just worked with IBM in the Middle East, Africa, and the UK. And I was able to work with a company in Vietnam.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That was
full circle.
Full circle. Absolutely. That was a highlight for me. I don't know, we talked about this when we spoke, but being a Vietnamese refugee and then having this woman in HR call me from this company in Vietnam and said, we want to have people be more innovative and creative here in our organization. Can you do a workshop for us? And in that planning, my workshops are very fun, engaging. There's a lot of hands-on stuff clearly. And I play, we do a lot of play. So at the very last meeting, she's like, I'm going to bring the chief HR officer because I want her to hear what you're planning. And of course I was like, okay, I better tell her what I'm doing to make sure that it's in line with the culture, that there's nothing I'm doing that's going to be offensive. And here I am sitting on Zoom, Vietnamese American, 2 Vietnamese women in Vietnam on Zoom. And I tell her, here's what I'd like to go through with you just to make sure there's nothing that I shouldn't be doing. And she looks at me and she's like, do whatever you want. We're trying to disrupt this culture.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, yeah.
Amazing. You're like,
amazing.
Yes.
And yeah, talk about full circle. I literally was like, we fled this country because of the lack of freedom.
Yes.
And now you're sitting here telling me I can do whatever I want. Like we're trying to disrupt this whole place. I was like, I could have started crying, but I think I thought I was a little nuts already, so I didn't cry.
Wow. I think, oh my God, that is so cool. And it's so cool because there's a lot of intention behind that opportunity falling into your lap. And
oh my gosh, you never know. Yes.
There is so much intention behind that moment. And, it's so beautiful because who else would be such a great person to be in that role? The person whose family was uprooted, whose family was disrupted because of everything that was happening there.
Yes. And on that note too, my work with veterans started in a very similar like serendipitous way through Lego Serious Play. I am a certified Lego Serious Play facilitator, and I'm on a forum of Lego Serious Play facilitators. And a gentleman named John Brewer from Canada had written on there, I have a friend of a friend who's looking for someone who does Lego Serious Play in Southern California. So I raised my hand, I'm like, I'll talk to them, not knowing anything about it. So the friend of the friend happened to be this man who is a great friend of mine now named Joe Lara. And he was the VP of programming for the Honor Foundation. And the Honor Foundation, they work with military special force operators like Navy SEALs as they transition to civilian careers. And they put them through this 3-month program called the Waypoint program. And Joe showed me the whole program. He's like, I want to add creativity somewhere in this program. Can you give me some ideas? So I gave him like 4 or 5 places I could insert creativity. He's like, okay, let's put you here. And he put me in a spot called Transition Night. It's the last class before graduation. And so I bring in all my modalities and we talk about what's possible for your future. And we do it through creativity. And as I was standing in front of the first cohort teaching this Transition Night in San Diego, it just dawned on me. I'm like, it's not lost on me right now that the military was a part of my transition into this new country all those years ago, 5 miles from here at Camp Pendleton. And here I am tonight, like being able to be a small part of your transition on Transition Night. That is also no accident.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. And how you're giving back is no accident. You had choice not to do that, but you are obviously doing it. And I feel that these opportunities are coming to you because your heart is to give back and give back in a way that is impactful and give back in a way that would make a deeper, long-term impact and not just something that's short-term. And so it's so cool that, you're using art, creativity to really bring those skill sets out of people. And sometimes we don't lean into that. And, I wanted to ask you, when you go into these companies, and so do you do like workshops for just 3 days, or are you doing like a long-term, let me come in and do training regularly? How does that work on your end?
So I prefer to do long-term work because especially in team development and leadership development, because when you talk about development, like development happens over time. So my programs are designed as long-term for team development. And when I think about team development, it's how do we work well together? How do I get to know you? So it's a version of team building, right? We have a lot of fun with team building stuff, but it goes a little bit deeper. It's like, how do we learn about one another? How do we work well with each other? So again, that's not a one-day workshop. So for team development, I have a program where we come in once a quarter and do a team development half day, full day if they'd like. I don't tend to do a lot of full days because I think it's pretty long, but at least a half day of just like being together and learning about one another through creativity, through interaction, through different activities. For leadership training, it's a 12-month program. And the way that works is I call it Leadership Canvas, and it's 6 building blocks. So we have about 13 building blocks that we can choose from depending on what your company needs. And we'll come in every other month and teach you a building block. Let's say the building block is conflict management and resolution. So again, we teach you mindset, skill set, behavior in a 3-hour course, leave you for a month to use those skills and those behaviors. And we come back the next month and we have a roundtable discussion. What worked, what didn't work, what more do you need? And then it's the month 3 that we come in with the next building block. So the idea is like after a year's worth of consistently learning and developing and using the tools of leadership, you've developed your leadership skills.
Wow. I'm like, I want to do that.
And it's so much fun too, right? Like, and that's the thing for me is like, I want people to be excited for us to come back. Yeah. Like, you know, and a little bit nervous, like, oh, what's she going to make me do this time?
Yeah. You know, I want to ask you, so what are some tangible tips? But I just feel like there's so much interaction and actual experiencing for you to be able to take away a tangible tip. But if you can, I don't know if you can even, but if you can share something that we can do at home, like for the people who don't have those big teams or are not in big, you know, company holders, but what can we do at home to kind of start this process?
In terms of being more creative?
Being creative, but allowing creativity to come into our leadership or our team building.
Got it. So I would say, I mean, I would say an easy one for individuals. When you say that for individual, I think it starts at the individual level. There's something that I do called, so we all have our to-do list, right? And it's like, you look at it, you're like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. And this works on mindset too, but it's a creative way to do it. So I find that when I'm looking at my to-do list, I'm like, I have to, like my energy's drained, I'm slumping down. But if you look at your to-do list and pick a couple items for the day and think about like, what's the impact of the activity, right? So sometimes I look at like, oh my gosh, I have to finish this proposal. Well, if I say, well, I get to do this proposal because the impact is that more people will experience my work, then all of a sudden I'm smiling, I'm sitting up straighter. And then what I talk about is like, take that instead of having a to-do list and put it on a map, right? Like literally like almost like a treasure map, like draw it out. So that's an easy one that you can do like for something like what I was just saying, like your to-do list, or just start sketching ideas instead of writing them down, right? And it's I'm like, so another quick and easy tool you can use with a team is this idea of when you are problem solving or overcoming a challenge, rather than sitting there and saying, okay, here's a challenge, what do you guys think, right? Because the other beautiful thing about creativity is it gives people a chance to have their voice heard and have their ideas heard in a way that makes sense for them. Mm-hmm. I am not someone, if you asked me that question, it was a room full of people, you're not going to hear from me. Like I clearly have a lot of ideas, but you're not going to hear from me because that's not the way I think. Yeah. But there's so many ways to do this, but let's say you have that challenge, you ask the question and you're like, I'm going to put up 4 pictures on the wall, whatever they are, a tree, a duck, a shoe. Yeah. And you say, what characteristics of these images represent a way we might be able to solve this problem? Right. Oh. Now you've got my interest.
Wow. I get it. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this map that you were saying. What is this, just a map of this is what I need to do, then I can go here, then I can go here? Or is this like the map something different? No, that's it. It really is just like a way to write your to-do list in a more creative and fun way that makes it exciting, right? And then I have this too. Maybe we can put this in the show notes. I have it as a freebie to join my newsletter, and it's just the idea of like mapping. Like think about the impact you want to make at the end of the day, and then what are you doing? Like, and then what you're doing during the day. How's it getting you to that impact? Yes, and the impact is not necessarily. The impact could be like what you said, where it is my work impacts people to be better leaders and have more creativity, allowing them to extract leadership and team development skills that they didn't know that they even had.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Whatever it is, like the impact you want to make is just
Right.
it's just like giving yourself because oftentimes we just go through our day and then we're at the end of the day, we're like, okay, we did I just checked off all those boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true because I love having lists. Like I think it's so much fun. But I also, if I had the time, I'd love to also like color coordinate things and make it look fun and pretty and fun. And sometimes you just don't have the time. But if you just start practicing it and doing it, you will make that time and that would become your to-do list.
That's right. Yes.
And yes, we will put everything in the show notes. So that link also will be in the show notes.
Great.
That's awesome. I think that is so cool because it is definitely a different way of looking at how to develop those skill sets that we didn't even realize we had. But it's not even developing them, but it's like seeing things in a different perspective. Like just the way you said the 4 pictures, and now how do you define them in a way that would be helpful to resolving this issue? And that's just
it's really just a tool, right? Because again, like some people are visual, and I can't pull out ideas straight out of my head.
Yeah.
I can look at a picture and be like, oh yeah, that reminds me, like, oh yeah, that tree reminds me that, all those branches reminds us that we have other resources we can draw on. We don't have to do this ourselves, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Gosh, did they teach this stuff in school?
No.
I mean, this should be taught in school and problem solving. And
yeah.
Wow, this would be so cool. That is, do you have, I'm like, you should write a book, number 1. And I would read it, number 2. And then I would follow everything you said. Oh my gosh, so cool. I know you have tons of resources on your websites. You have programs, right? What if the life-changing power of curiosity? No, that was your TED Talk, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I do keynote speaking too. So that is one of my talks I do.
Yeah. And you can find that TED Talk on YouTube.
Yep.
I think, right? Yeah, because
That's
I've
right.
seen it on YouTube. It's actually fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we do say goodbye and all the good stuff, I wanted to ask you because this is law talk, I mean, legal law chat and stuff like that. But I wanted to ask you if you've ever, if you've ever encountered a legal challenge or you kind of mitigated it because you were proactive about it. If you had anything that you could share.
I have, it's an interesting question. And I think I have not, other than my own personal channels, like how do I form an LLC? How do it's like, and as an entrepreneur, it's interesting. It's nice to have, have met you and have this resource now, because as an entrepreneur, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like it really is. I was like, I just want to start, you just want to start a business. You just want to do the things you love and share it with other people. And it's not, I will have to say, it's not effective to try to do it on your own. And I'm not a lawyer, right? And I realized that very quickly that I don't know what I need and I need help, because I know that these are things that need to be put in place for me to run a successful business and a legitimate business. And so I wouldn't say like I've had any legal issues. It's more of like my own limitations on, number one, knowing what I need, and then knowing how to get it in terms of forming my business. And now as I'm growing my business, we talked about like, what do I need to protect?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like are my contracts legitimate? All this stuff.
Yeah.
Which again, like as an entrepreneur, you want to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
And you realize like, no, you can't do it all yourself.
Kind of going back to what we initially started with, that community is everything, and leaning into other people's strengths can be very beneficial for a business also.
Absolutely. And there's people that want to help you. That's the other thing, right? It's like ask for help. There's people who want to help you.
Yes, that is so true. I think we forget that. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't done like studies on this or anything, but most definitely I feel like our society has become it's become more autonomous than it ever had been before. And I love the story of your parents and, your like the beginning stages of your life also, just because it shows the power of community, and it shows the power of just being nice and kind, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all feel the same things.
That's right. It's so true. So yeah, I always talk about like little, like small acts of kindness, right? Just helping someone and making them smile for the day. You never know how far that can go.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And I like to ask what your favorite book is. Like I like to end the conversations with that. But what is a book that you would recommend for us to read?
So I just recommended it on LinkedIn yesterday. It's a book from my mentor. His name is Dr. Robert Maurer. And it's called One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way. And I love it because it's a book about creativity and neuroscience and very practical in the sense that it talks about, when we try to reach our goals and make these giant leaps, oftentimes we won't reach them because our brain is designed to stop us from doing things that are too challenging or might harm us. That's how our brain is wired. But if we take these small little micro steps, we can reach our goals much faster because we're bypassing that brain's natural instinct to protect us. And I will tell you that book did change my life. That book, that tiny little book, it's a little small little book, everyone can read it within a day. It helped me launch my business.
Wow. Is it available on Amazon?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Well, the link will be there in the show notes as well. And how can people reach you and how can they say hi to you?
Well, I would give you my phone number because I was like, anyone can call me, but maybe I shouldn't do that. So again, LinkedIn, I am always on LinkedIn sharing information under my name, Lai-DuMone. And my website is worksmartadvantage.com. And if you're interested in helping veterans and being part of a veteran ally group, I am also part of a group that meets every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time called Angels 14. And our website is angels14.com.
And can they meet via Zoom also?
Yes, it's all on Zoom.
Awesome. I know you do some fantastic work with the veterans, for the veterans. And so anybody out there that's interested, reach out. And I'm sure Yvonne will be just super happy to embrace you.
Yes, veterans or allies, everyone is welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girja. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girja. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.